Chipotle has unveiled that it will be releasing for a limited time plant-based chorizo and new lifestyle bowls. And as a marketer, I think this is a really interesting play for three reasons. And there are three reasons why I think that businesses really of any size can learn from this tactic that Chipotle has employed here to bring plant-based chorizo and different lifestyle bowls to market. And the first is that the idea, I imagine, for a plant-based chorizo or a plant-based bowl comes from the growing sentiment or the growing momentum behind Meatless Mondays. And that's the first lesson. I think that companies, especially when you think about smaller restaurants, think about your area, think about even just on the delivery apps, for example, the restaurants that are on there that are easily accessible to you within a geographic region. The idea that you can tack on to movements and tack on to things like Meatless Monday, regardless of kind of what your restaurant stands with that brand. And you think about what it means for them to say, okay, we're going to release a plant-based bowl. Yeah, maybe it helps or it works for what they want to achieve from a brand code perspective, but it really is just a chance to increase exposure. I mean, one of the core tenets or the core functions or the core pillars, in fact, of a great marketing program is how strong your PR program is, and attaching to things that have momentum and things that the press can say, okay, well, who is Meatless Mondays, for example, in the local market, who's doing that in our area, and if your restaurant is serves whatever kind of food, barbecue, for example, it's a bit of a novelty, to say that, okay, we're releasing a plant-based dish or a plant-based product for a certain amount of time, and that's a great way to pick up press, and that inevitably typically results in increase in revenue. Now, the second thing, and that it kind of bleeds in from understanding the brand codes that you have associated to your company, is understanding your customer. I think with any move like this, anytime you deviate from say your core products or your core services or your core platform, you're indicating to the market something. And a lot of the times marketers typically don't think that way. But for Chipotle, which has a customer base that thinks something of its relationship with the company, for it to say, okay, we're going to release a plant-based bowl, it's probably had to do some sort of calculus internally to where you're saying, okay, who are we alienating by doing something like this, and who are we catering to? You think of a great kind of case study that we talk about internally a lot is Gillette, and back in the day they did an ad campaign to where they talked about toxic masculinity. So some sort of calculus has to go on internally to where you say, okay, if we put this messaging out into the world, this marketing messaging, who are we alienating and who are we catering to? And there's always got to be that give and take when you put anything out into the market. Every go-to-market strategy has to be rooted in what you're thinking about from a seesaw level of who are we alienating and who are we appeasing or appealing to. And so, yes, experiment and do these kinds of things, but also understand, who your core customer is, and does this alienate too many of our core customers to where they're going to be disappointed or offended or upset by a move like this? Or does this bring in more? And you've got to look at your net basis and say, okay, does this actually net out positive for us? And that's typically a better strategy to go. So that's number two. And then the third is experiment. And then again, we talked about that in number two. But experimentation is one of those things where you see it actually more in foreign markets, I've found. As someone who's I've lived in a few different countries in Southeast Asia and in the States. I've just lived all over the world. I found that one of the big differences when it comes to, especially food, I think, in restaurants in the U.S. is that there's a little bit less experimentation going on. Businesses and restaurants are typically they're happy to stick to their core service or their core product and not deviate so much. I mean, I'll give you a good example, and it's one that For example, in Hong Kong, where I spent a significant amount of time, there is I believe it's once a year or twice a year they unveil these seasoning packets that go on French fries. And these seasoning packets are ridiculously popular. I mean, when I say ridiculously popular, imagine just people lining up for these things, and they're just little packets that you sprinkle on your French fries. An easy thing from a supply chain level, I think, or a strategy level, to just have it. It's similar to ketchup in terms of probably food costs or the cogs of having a packet of seasoning. But they don't do that. What they do is they hold it and they offer it for a limited time every single year, and it's typically about the same period of the year. And demand gets pent up throughout the year for what is this ridiculously popular product. And they know that when that time of the year comes around, McDonald's that is, that they're going to have this thing that they can probably charge a premium for, and they'll know that they'll sell out of it without an issue. But that comes from consistent, it's not A/B testing, but it's consistent experimentation when it comes to offering things to the market. And in Asia, where I spent a significant amount of time, you find that even corporations like McDonald's, that you imagine are a little slower when it comes to decision making or getting things to market, do a great job of throwing things out there all the time to get feedback from the market to understand what things are popular and what things aren't. And so for all the merits that there are for Chipotle releasing this plant-based bowl and lifestyle bowl the start of the new year to tack onto resolutions, at the start of the new year to tack onto the growing momentum around Meatless Mondays, it's a great way for them to experiment. Okay, is the market receptive to plant-based XYZ, and is this something that we can, on a long-term basis, explore as a permanent food offering? And so between those three things, I think you've got an interesting formula for restaurants, especially as I mentioned earlier, the local restaurants in your area, to where you can get feedback from the market and see where where in the market can we grow out, where can we expand our pie a little bit to where we can gain market share in our area. And tying into that, and the very last point I'll make is that another great thing that Chipotle has done with the release of these plant-based things is that they've lowered the barrier of entry for people that want to get into it. So the tactic that they've done is that they've removed delivery fees for specifically these items and these items only. So you can go onto whatever delivery app you choose and order Chipotle's plant-based chorizo or these lifestyle bowls and not have to pay the typical fees that you would have to pay for another food item at the store. And of course, that also then incentivizes people to, who are maybe cost conscious or whatever, who just want to give it a try. It absolutely lowers the barrier of entry, which is a genius marketing tactic that I think businesses that are on these delivery apps, think of your local area again, could employ when they're bringing something new to the market, to try and get that feedback from the market as to, does this plant-based thing work, or does this ingredient work, or does this new meat source work, for example. Does this new idea, concept work? Lower the barrier of entry, take the hit on the cost space, because that feedback is invaluable when it comes to thinking about the long-term strategy of your business and expanding out into areas, pushing up against the walls where you currently sit, for example, and saying, okay, where do we have room in the marketplace to expand? And so between those 3.5 things, I'd say, you've got something to think about, at least I think from a marketing standpoint and a brand strategy standpoint for businesses that are in any vertical, really, that are in any industry. But I think food service, especially in restaurants, especially in the local area, local restaurants that target or that cater to a smaller geographic area, have real opportunity to expand their market share, to expand what they're getting from the market in terms of feedback, and to bring new things to the market. I think it's always exciting. So just fun stuff to think about. If you like this video, please consider hitting the like button and then also subscribing so that you get all these updates as they come out.